Jerusalem Defender, Jerusalem as a human right of the Jewish people, plus a discussion of peace plans, why they haven't worked, and the best alternatives available. In addition, we will address anti-Semitism and ways to end it, God willing, forever.
We really all have to stand up for the Jewish people, and because if we don't, the effects we've seen the effects in Nazi Germany of just laying low and hoping the storm clouds will pass. They don't pass. So to me, it's all about standing up for your people and doing it, in a way that's you're also respectful, but and kind. But we have to defend ourselves and not let evil go unchallenged.
That's one of the things that has puzzled me for a long time, and I was discussing it with a rabbi once, and it's like, the origins of anti-Semitism, or why does it exist? Why is there such a thing as anti-Semitism? What is the hate based on? What is the reasoning behind it? And there is no reasoning. And it is almost to me like a supernatural type of thing. It's that it just exists. It exists in the world, and to play whatever role it has to play. And so maybe if me wanting to be a logical type of person that has to try to find a reason for things, maybe anti-Semitism exists in order for the nations to stand up and say, "Hey, we don't want this. We want a Jewish nation. We want a Jewish people. We want them to thrive and to be comfortable to learn and share Torah and connect with Hashem and the world." And
absolutely. In fact, I've often thought, I heard this before, that in some ways the Jews are the canary in the coal mine. It's like when things are going wrong in society and society's drifting towards evil, we're often one of the first victims. It's almost like we in our role of being a light to the nations are like the first defense against evil in a way. Maybe perhaps that's partially why there's anti-Semitism, which, by the way, is foretold. It's foretold in the Tanakh, right? That it's going to happen. It's not like it's coming from nowhere. But,
yeah, it's just maybe like in science and in ecology and things like that. When we start seeing 4- and 5-legged, 6-legged frogs, we know that there's something going on bad in the environment, and to start looking at and finding reasons to what's happening. So maybe that's that is, and you know what, that could be an indicator of the exile and the Jewish people, within the world, and what is this meaning of exile, and what does it mean to the Jewish people, but also what does it mean to the non-Jewish people, and this condition that we find ourselves in society, where we have Jewish people in every nation of the world, and we have Israel fighting for a homeland. And now, everyone is forced to look at this condition and ask, for me, is to ask why. What is Hashem trying to reveal to us? What does He want us to know? What is He trying to get us to understand? Us as the nations, and us and as Israel. What's the purpose in this? Why is there baseless hatred in the world that has no rhyme or reason to a people who do nothing but bring success and morals into reality? and into where they live at, into their neighborhoods, into the countries they reside in.
It even raises the question. I'm sorry. Like it raises the even greater question. Like, why is there evil? Why did Hashem create evil? That's always a question that I have grappled with. Um, Perhaps it's what is necessary to help us grow, to learn, to learn to grow spiritually. You have to have that evil in the world. Um, so
Yes,
Well, yeah, definitely,
in
definitely
Isaiah.
to understand, the way I was taught it is in order to understand, to know good, we have to have a comparison to evil, because we have to have
yes,
everything in contrast. So, we are, our simple minds can only learn in contrast with something else. So how do I know something's good? Because evil exists, and I can distinguish between the two now. So, but baseless hatred, that is what I don't understand. Is I can understand if you got evil for a reason, you've got hatred for a reason, but when there's no reason to hate, what is behind that?
that reminds me when you use the word baseless hatred. Wasn't that the reason why the Second Temple was destroyed? Because even amongst ourselves, we had baseless hatred amongst like one group of Jews, the Pharisees versus the Sadducees versus so forth. It's almost like that's the direction we have to move in order to get away from that baseless hatred to make human progress. And we're always on the front lines of that for some reason. Um, it has something to do. It's like a puzzle to be unraveled. It has something to do with our being a light to the nations, a role that we kind of took on with the covenant. It's like being a covenanted people is not an easy job. You've seen Fiddler on the Roof where Tevye goes, "Can you please choose somebody else for a while?" Right? You've seen that line, right? It's not always that fun to be in the role that we are in. But it's an
Well,
important role that
yeah,
brings, it doesn't mean, by the way, that we're better than anybody. We're humans. It's just that we have a special role to fulfill. That's, I
yeah,
mean, that's
yeah. Pertinent to that, I'd like to quote a couple of verses from Tanakh, the Hebrew Bible. So,
absolutely.
first of all, in Isaiah, the book that taught us about the light unto the nations. So, in chapter 45, verses 17 and 18. Israel shall be saved by the Lord with an everlasting salvation. You shall neither be ashamed nor disgraced to all eternity. For so said the Lord, the creator of heaven, who is God, who formed the earth and made it. He established it and did not create it for waste. He formed it to be inhabited. I am the Lord, there is no other. So God wants people to progress as a world, a place of civilization. And
Exactly.
anti-Semitism and hate is a breaking down of God's plan for the world. And it also says in Isaiah, I believe it's 43. Let me check.
You haven't memorized all of this? Oh, I'm just kidding.
Well, only so much. You need more RAM to process all the
Absolutely.
multitasking at once. You know,
Do you think one of the aspects of it also is that we just can't seem to learn our lesson? We keep doing foolish things, hating ourselves, not defending ourselves, and we have a hard time learning the lesson of Esther over and over again.
Yeah, I think in the microcosm, that's probably very true. And we hate ourselves or something about ourselves, and in the macrocosm that just kind of relates into everyone hating everyone else. As you zoom in or zoom out, and when we go into examine this idea of hatred, and it is and we can zoom in and we can see that hatred within ourselves, amongst ourselves, and then zoom out and see it in every facet of society.
Yeah. And
Everyone.
in fact, go
I
ahead.
found the verse.
No,
You found the verse. Okay.
Yeah, it's not two chapters before. It's just a few verses before. Also in chapter 45 of Isaiah. So let's see. Let's say 5 through 7. I am the Lord, there is no other besides me, there is no God. I will strengthen you, although you have not known me, in order that they know from the shining of the sun and from the west that there is no other besides me. I am the Lord, and there is no other, who forms light and creates darkness, who makes peace and creates evil. I am the Lord who makes all these. So
That's interesting.
through the prophecy of Isaiah, who creates evil. But you notice it doesn't say who wields evil.
Right.
God only allows humans to wield evil. God does not wield evil himself.
Their choice.
Yeah. So our goal is to make the right ethical and moral choices, hopefully according to God's wisdom. But even just common sense would lead people, if they really don't want to hurt people, to make certain healthy, not just lifestyle choices, but philosophical directions in their lives, to not judge people, to hate them. Like you could judge someone favorably, even if you, and like show a certain amount of non-risky trust before you get to know them. Before you could, you can't love a stranger, so to speak, but you could at least give enough trust to entertain the possibility of dialogue and all the good things that could follow from that. Assuming you have people who are interested in civilization, people who are interested in destroying civilization are the opposite of what we need to pursue as far as having a conversation. Then it's just a matter of, if people don't want civilization, so you just protest them, and if they have weapons, so you just have to argue with them in a more of a civilized manner. But so now, as to the root causes of it, there's another verse in the Bible I want to quote. This is in Deuteronomy chapter 4. Okay, there you go. Okay, chapter 4 of Deuteronomy, verses 5 and 6. Behold, I have taught you statutes and ordinances as the Lord my God commanded me to do so in the midst of the land to which you are coming to possess. And you shall keep them and do them, for that is your wisdom and your understanding in the eyes of the peoples, who will hear all these statutes and say, only this great nation is a wise and understanding people. So, and the most popular book in the world is the King James Bible, right? So this verse is everywhere, and yet there's anti-Semitism. You think that in a world where the most popular book is the King James Bible, how is it possible? Except that people are getting pamphlets of hate instead of a Bible session in Deuteronomy. Yeah, that's the main difference. And in fact, the Jewish king is commanded to read from the book of Deuteronomy at least once every 3 years. Really? So Deuteronomy could be the whole difference between anti-Semitism, a world without anti-Semitism, and the world we have today. So we don't currently have a king reading it once every 3 years.
Without a proper Torah understanding, then it doesn't work. And one of the things that I look at when I'm thinking about Deuteronomy, the Torah, or these different things, from a Gentile perspective, is that we are taught, and we also are, when we read it, that we don't see ourselves within Torah. We are excluded from it. The King James Bible and the teaching of the church excludes us from the Torah. God doesn't. This is, God didn't think about you, and it's nothing further from the truth. God had me, the Gentile, in mind when the Torah was created. So once we can see ourselves within the Torah, and that was one of the changing points for us coming out of the church and coming into a truer understanding Torah and God's Word was when we began to see ourselves within it, and then we understood that God always had us in mind, and that there was always grace, mercy, salvation, love, compassion, mercy for the non-Jewish people as well as the Jewish people. So once we grasp that the Torah is just not a Jewish book, I know, and there's a lot of people on both sides of the fence will argue that point, but we got to start looking at a universal Torah if we want to start trying to eliminate this baseless hatred that arises from what? From being excluded from the Gentile side. When you're excluded from something, you're going to lash out at it. And
So
we
now,
see that in all kinds of society.
Go ahead.
in case somebody didn't catch that, or we didn't add that into the video, Russell is a Ben Noach extraordinaire. So he is a Gentile who respects the
I'm
Torah.
one of the bigger ones, Rabbi.
Oh, pretty good, pretty good. So,
Did you have your beard before you? Your beard is perfect.
yeah,
I've had it a while. It's older than most fifth graders.
And that's why I wanted to have a Ben Noach in this conversation. So, from a Jewish perspective, I mean, even if somebody wants to be an advocate for Jews, and they're going to university surrounded by people who hate them, there could be an aspect of self-consciousness, like an innocent person who's insulted for everything they do. They're too self-conscious to even defend themselves appropriately. Certainly not the ideals of perhaps Torah ideals in a public setting. But there are certain basic truths that a Ben Noach with an outsider perspective can get to faster than a Jew could get to, because a Jew's trying to wade through so many emotions before they can even deliver the message. So, Russell, that being the case, what would you have to say about why is it so important for anyone to oppose anti-Semitism, not just Jews?
Right, because we're when we're squelching the Jewish people, in squelching them, I'm talking about within society, within their religion, within everything else. The Jewish people has had to retreat inside their own walls, so to speak, whether it was the ghetto or it was their own communities or whatever it is. They had to retreat back into that. So basically, it is the Gentile who is putting the basket over his light by causing this to happen, and Judaism has evolved underneath that basket, so to speak, within itself. And so now, 2,000 years later, we come back and we say, hey, what about us, guys? Y'all are supposed to be a light to the nation. You're supposed to be all of this. And the Jewish people, the rabbis, the society, doesn't have the capability to deal with a Ben Noach like me that says, hey, teach me Torah. I want to know the truth of Hashem. I want to know all these things. I want to understand, my place in Torah. I want to understand what's going on. And we have a little joke amongst ourselves about drafts and about being giraffes, and it comes from going into a shul in Chicago, and we went in there, and everybody looked at us like people would look at you for the first time if you ever seen a giraffe for the first time ever, and you look at it and it's like, and so we kind of make this joke about ourselves about being a giraffe. and like the Jewish people are finally getting to see the giraffes, seeing these people that are coming out, wanting Torah, want to be close to Hashem, want to find themselves within the Torah and within Hashem's plan on how we're to live, act, do, be, exist in this world as part of the nations. Not, but the Jewish society can only understand it, only deal with this thing within the context of a conversion. Now, once you convert, then you can understand all of this stuff. But yet, 80% of the people who aspire to be to have a Jewish conversion are rejected. So I mean, we find ourselves in a really peculiar place as far as wanting Torah, trying to access to that Torah, and within a Judaism that has been so self-contained for so many thousands of years, that it doesn't know how to deal with basically a society of a deteriorating church, which is where we're at.
Yeah, I mean, like anti-Semitism is kind of like a vast ocean of pressure, and like Judaism went from like a big ship with an open deck to they had to become like a submarine under the pressure of the exile. So when you have so that's why it may seem like Judaism is more closed as far as conversion and stuff like that. At least we're talking about Orthodox Judaism, and because by the weight of pressure of anti-Semitism, if Israel did not cocoon itself religiously, then there would be no light to share with the nations anymore. So it was.
Well, if you're saying, Russell, that it should be a little easier. By the way, I'm a conservative Jew, just to let you know. But I've got a friend who is really, really trying hard to convert. He's moved to a city where there's more Jews. He walked for 3 miles to synagogue, and it's still taking forever. I think I do think it could be made a little easier than it is. I understand you don't want to make it too easy because you want to make sure that the people. I know the tradition. You're supposed to sort of say no at first, but I think they could relax that a little bit, and it would be in their interest to do that because, like, he's getting frustrated. It's like, what do I have to do?
It's so refreshing that there are people who want to convert, and even if they don't convert, want to at least be Torah respecting B'nai Noach Gentiles. It's a totally different world. But again, before we could even adapt to that, suddenly we're back into a world movement of anti-Semitism again.
Well,
so this explains why we keep having this problem, is because it's all about Jewish survival at this point, not light unto the nations as God wants. But
I think you have to do both,
God,
and that's the thing. Yeah.
Now, listening to God requires you listening to God. So the same God who wants morality, justice, a world of civilization, Torah knowledge to be spread, shared to all unto the world, light unto the nations, when people are insulting the Jews, they're insulting their message as well. So therefore, it's a breakdown of the capacity to do the opposite. It's like if somebody's ill and the doctor says they have to get some exercise, but they feel too ill to get exercise. So it's like a countdown. Will they exercise faster? Then they get more sick because they're not exercising. So
you have to be brave. Well, I really feel that you have to have courage. What does that say? What is that song, Rabbi? Life is a narrow bridge. But the main thing, the main thing is not to fear.
The whole wide world is a narrow bridge.
But the main thing is not to fear.
Right.
But see, I think we have to do both, even in the face of the fact that it's, even when we're just trying to survive, we still cannot let go of. You know what that reminds me of a little bit? I was thinking, this came to my mind. You're all familiar with the Turkish genocide of the Armenians during World War One, right?
Hmm.
Okay, so the Armenians asked Israel to acknowledge that genocide, which everyone knows about. It's in the history books. There's no question about it. And Israel was reluctant to do it because they didn't want to piss off Turkey. Now, it's like they didn't want to do it. It's like, and now look what's happened. Turkey's no friend of Israel now, is it?
Mhm.
I mean, I think they should have done it. I don't know. I don't remember if they finally did or not. It takes bravery to speak up for justice, but I feel like when you do that, you have a better chance of things working out for you, just like you did when Esther spoke up. It's like it's scary, but when when you don't give in to that fear, and it's easy to say. I mean, I'm living in this cushy environment. I've had scary things happen to me, but I'm saying it's easy to say that, but I really feel that I've stood up for things when I found, even at risk, and I feel like that's what we have to do. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, that's it's true, but you may not notice this, either one of y'all, but Gentiles are hard to deal with. Uh, and
Gentiles.
and I can understand the problem. We expect so much of the Jewish people in either perspective, whether it's putting the pressures of anti-Semitism on them, or the pressures of being a light to the world. I mean,
Yeah.
it's and the Jewish people, we have this expectation from them to go from somewhere, from imprisonment to rock stars. And we are not giving the Jewish people any opportunity to adjust, and that's mostly because it's our nature. But we can see this. So there's got to be some kind of, and I think this is a point in history and time to why we're sitting here and being able to discuss this this topic, is because we're at that mixture of where this is all coming together, and we're all being able to discuss this and talk about it and think about it and figure out honestly who we are and what we're doing and what our expectations of everybody is, and somewhere in that mix we're going to figure out the will of Hashem.
I do think, I am grateful for the Gentiles and there's plenty of them who are our friends and our allies. I'm reminded of my wife grew up in a small town in North Carolina. She's deceased 7 years ago. One of her best friends was a fundamentalist Christian, and I still stay in contact with them, with her. And yes, sure, they wanted to convert us, but she said, look, we're commanded to love the Jewish people, whether you convert or not. And so
Well, I don't know
think
where
that we do have Gentile allies, but for sure, and we want to continue to nurture them, those relationships, don't you think?
Yes, but they're the same problem. There is Gentiles are having the same type of struggle coming out of the church into Torah. So we're going through this same pressure of trying not to be too supportive of the church, who are that we feel that we were trapped in, and then we have to. So what I've noticed over the years is there's usually this when you first come out of the church, we are very extraordinarily anti-church, which gives probably the Jewish people a small break, because we're so busy hating the Christians that we don't have any time to worry the Jews. But we get into this type of thing to where we become so anti-church, and then as we grow and mature and learn a little bit better, we start being more inclusive and more understanding to where the church is and what the problems are. But there is this, and it's like a phenomenon of anti-church sentiment for those coming out and seeing Torah and realizing, the origins of the church, then realizing, the purpose and place of the Jewish people, and we have this resentment for the church. So
You have that
we have to
perspective.
go.
You have a unique perspective that I don't have because I was born Jewish, and I've never, I've never had that. I have come to realize that I believe that God reveals Himself to people in different ways. That for us, we have the Torah, and I feel like the Christians, their path to God, God's listening to them too. You know what I mean? It's like it's especially if they're good people and if they're the righteous. What's the word, Rabbi? Righteous Gentiles. It's just, there's plenty
Yeah,
of.
tzaddik almost all them righteous.
Yes,
The
yes.
nation.
I mean, and there's plenty of them, but I feel like
So,
I used
so
to think. Go ahead.
no, it's okay. You used to think what, and then
I used to think like, oh my friend is so mistaken. She's like, she believes in Jesus and it's a false god. And now I realize it's okay for her to do that. I don't want, that's not my path. But her path is how she visualizes God. That's just, and we've never said that everyone has to be Jewish. So it's like I'm fully accepting of other people's paths as long as they are decent people.
well,
Yeah.
as an Orthodox rabbi, I think their focus has to be on ethics and morals, and
Yes.
according to God's
Yes.
will, and not particulars of a religion. Otherwise, you're limiting which religions could participate.
I
However,
think, yeah.
I just because Russell's a former pastor, a Christian pastor, so I just to clarify, because you're not talking about a self-hating of Christians, you're talking about something else, like the impediment you found among the church towards learning more
Right.
about God.
Well, Christian, and that's true. Christians are good people. My mama was a Christian, so Christians are good people. They have good morals. The thing is when you're looking at the world from the Christian perspective, you see it one way. When you step out of that and you look at it, you look back into it from a Torah perspective, you see it a totally different way, and
Hmm.
you see the history of deceit, and it wasn't according to where God's word, so to speak.
The deceit, you're talking about the church you're referring to.
Yes, when we're talking about when we look back into the church, once you step out of the church and look back into it, you see the the hypocrisy, you see the manipulation, you see the things that you were taught, and many people come out of the church feeling like they were lied to, and that we were sold this bill of goods. And this is not what God said. This is not His will. This is not how He wanted to be worshipped. This is not what was going on. And so we have there's this natural resentment for the whole process. But yet, your kids, your family, your parents, everybody, they're all still Christians. And so to be in this position that the B'nai Noach find themselves in, they're trying to be Torah-based, righteous Gentiles. It's very difficult because we're in between these two worlds of trying to navigate on that perspective with your family, with your friends, with the past church lives. And then you turn right back around and you're stepping into a Jewish world where you're facing a whole nother set of problems because can we trust these people? Can we let them in? Can we let them get too close? They're not going through conversion. We got to stand back and we got to, keep an arm's length here. And so it is one of the most difficult places I think I could ever figure out how to put myself in, but leave it up to my, I did.
So,
But it is very, very difficult.
now,
Um, uh,
Russell, so I've noticed, so the B'nai Noach movement is approaching Torah, but while as they maintain Christian friends. So therefore,
some
uh,
of them, not all.
right, not all, correct,
They have
not
to
all,
be really close ones, let me tell you.
right. But
Uh,
If they're
so in
accepting
other
of
words,
you, then it's okay,
it's
right? As long
right,
as they're accepting of you,
yeah, of
then
course.
you have no
So,
yeah,
problem with being
right,
accepting
like
of them.
I taught in a Torah class that um, don't be upset with Christians and don't insult Christians. Just if
Right.
you're going to disagree with Christians, focus on from what the Torah perspective would consider a heresy against the Torah found in the New Testament. It's not about Christians. It's just a disagreement between texts.
When I was a
So
kid, I used to have these great conversations. We would go to dorms and someone's dorm and hang out and talk about the different, religions and so forth. And I don't do that anymore. I love doing that. And like, oh no, you're wrong. Jesus is not God. And now I stopped doing that. I'm just like accepting. I'm like, oh well, we differ on that, but I try to focus on the things that we have in common, which I feel is the best way to build bridges with the Gentiles.
yeah,
Like you said, the ethics, the, the things that we all believe in, and try to like let them believe whatever they want to believe about the other stuff, and I believe whatever I want to believe about it.
yeah. Well,
I
we
does
sit
that
there and
help? Does that help you at
we
all?
sit there and say, when a B'nai Noach is doing right, when you came into your being, when you came into being a B'nai Noach, your friends and your family think you're a Jew, and the Jewish people think you're a Christian. When you
Yeah,
reach that point,
that's
you're
22.
there.
I can see that would create a lot of strife. I can see,
Yeah,
I can feel that. It's kind
yeah,
of hard to, there's I can see that would cause resentment on both sides potentially. I've never quite thought about that before because I never had that situation.
yeah. It's
Um,
this is very unique, but it's a very unique time we're in, and so the only reason we're debating and talking about anti-Semitism uh, is because of this situation. Is because people are finding themselves in this place. My father looked at me one time and said, look, I never thought I'd have a Jewish son. It's like, how is, you don't have a Jewish son, but in his mind he thought I was, our kids thought because we redid our vows underneath a huppah,
right.
we they thought we had converted to Judaism, and they thought we were converts to Judaism. And
You're
so
caught
when we
between two
told them, it
worlds.
was years later. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was years later. We were having this discussion, and we're going like, no, we haven't converted to Judaism, and just the surprise on their face was like, man, what were you doing back then? What was all this stuff with the rabbi? And so it's a very difficult world, but because these worlds are coming together, and because the church is trying to reevaluate its place, and Judaism is reevaluating its place. We're sitting here talking about anti-Semitism and trying to figure out what this baseless hatred is about and why it even exists. I can understand the territorial strife in the Middle East and the political things that's going on. You can understand that, but why the intimate hatred between the rabbi down the road and your church friends that you had at one time, right down the other side of the road? And it's amazing, and I it goes back. It has to go back into something that's psychologically rooted into each individual's psyche. Whether it's genetic memory or whatever it is, there is this trigger that has this thing of separation. in order for individual survival, and survival not in the physical sense, but in the survival of your identity. And so everyone's fighting for an identity, and this fluke in nature called B'nai Noach and the righteous Gentile, we found our identity in the Torah, which is absurd in the vision of the world from the Jewish perspective and from the church perspective.
Well, I think it's perfect. Russell, you're familiar with my essay. I wrote about the role of Gentiles in creation, that it's natural for a Gentile to remain a Ben Noach, not convert. Even though the natural thing is, you want to get ahead, you want to achieve the highest level of in a college or if Ben Noach refers to the kingdom of priests, the Jews' kingdom of priests, so they want to be a part of that. But the way God made people, God knows what He's doing. So, and you could look that up on my blog. The role of Gentiles.
I just wish the people knew what they were doing a little bit.
But what can we do? Here's another thing I think about. What can we do to build bridges? I discovered that you can build bridges with people, and then they don't hate you as much when they get to know you, or when like when you do acts of kindness towards them. One thing I have discovered, I have seen this. I've seen Gentiles say one of the reasons why they hate the Jews is because, you think you're the chosen people, so you must think you're better than us.
God says we're the chosen people, but we're still not necessarily better, especially if we don't behave better. We have to choose good.
I consider us to be a chosen people. There's nothing in the Torah that says other people haven't been chosen for something else.
Well, right. Yeah, in the narrative of Torah, it's talking about as God's kingdom of priests. So from that perspective,
we're there, and actually, I think of it this way: we've taken on this yoke of additional responsibility to help the world, and that's how I see it. It doesn't make us better; it just gives us more responsibility because we have greater knowledge, and who was it who said, with great knowledge comes great responsibility?
That's Friedlander, yeah.
That was Spider-Man's uncle. But there was also somebody before them who said that. So,
I've been accused of the same thing, even amongst B'nai Noach, because I decided, I took on, I didn't have to, but I took on not eating pork. I just took it on as a personal thing to me that I took on, that I'm not going to eat pork. Okay. Well, then what are the B'nai Noach's going to tell you that eat pork? Well, you think you're better than I am because you don't eat pork?
Right. And probably your best thing, how do you handle that?
Well, from the perspective of you are what you eat, at least you're not making a pig of yourself.
Well,
that's what I tell people on Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving, you are what you eat. But what do you how do you respond to that?
Well, you try to tell them that look, I'm not imposing it on you.
Right. Well, yes, that's right. That's what I was thinking. That's exactly.
I'm not saying, eat whatever you want. You're free to eat whatever you want. Eat whatever you want.
I'm better. This is the path you've chosen. It doesn't make it. Yeah, I think that's the best way to handle it.
But you see, Jason, where we were at right there is, I was being tolerant. Like, you're free to eat whatever you want. You eat tolerant, right. But there's not tolerant of me not eating pork.
Well, maybe when you explain, and some people might not be, and then maybe you can't reach them.
Again, no.
But you can try, and there's some people that you can reach. Like some people.
This was in. I'm talking about within Torah-based Gentiles who were studying Torah, who accepted.
Okay, that's right. You mentioned, yes, within B'nai Noach itself.
Yeah, it's not within the church. In the church, the church you're going to get when you say, well, it's good,
Wait, let me get this straight. There's people in B'nai Noach themselves who think you're strange for not eating pork?
Absolutely. All right.
That's something I hadn't thought. Okay, no, I didn't understand
that. If pigs could talk, they would like Russell very much. So I think he has some sort of...
eat more chicken.
No, that's weird that that's weird that they would have that view, because it's like they're different from the other Gentiles, and yet why can't they tolerate the fact that you don't want to eat pork?
There is a huge schism there's a huge schism, and this may touch on and give us some insight. There's a huge schism between the B'nai Noach, the righteous, from among the nations, on should you do an extra mitzvah or should you just only do the 7? And so we've been battling this for 20 years, and it's divided over it.
Yes, 7 mitzvahs of the B'nai Noach.
Of Noah.
Yeah. The seven B'nai Noach mitzvahs, and some of them hold that you should only do that, and that's all you should do. And they have their rabbis that support them in their position that this is all you should do. You cannot do another one. You cannot observe, a type of Sabbath. You cannot observe like putting a mezuzah on your door, so what this animosity that I've ran across because I have a mezuzah on my door or I observe a type of Shabbat, beginning at the evening of Friday evening to Saturday evening, and I observe this time. I don't keep it as a Jew would keep it, but I still observe it. So they have this animosity toward that, and so as a Christian would have animosity for the Jew.
Yeah, that's strange.
Observing
I don't understand that. You'd think they would be more compassionate and tolerant because they are different too. Then there are other Gentiles. But
Yeah.
Rabbi, when the word B'nai Noach literally means like children of Noah, right? But is that
or disciples?
disciples?
of
Is
Noah.
that is that? But isn't there a different word for the righteous among the Gentiles? Or is that a same? Is
Tzadikei
that the
Ummot
same
Ha'olam.
word?
Yeah, the righteous.
That's
Nations of the
a
world.
different Hebrew word, right?
Right. Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I don't
So-
understand why they would be intolerant of you for doing that.
But see, this is where the key is, and this may be where the key of anti-Semitism comes in. It becomes those who are doing a mitzvah and those are not.
Yeah.
So it's the mitzvah that is
commandment.
defining anti-Semitism. It is the mitzvah that is getting the opposition. The Jews just happen to be the guys that are doing the mitzvahs.
The Jews are
Because
always
if a B'nai
viewed like
Noach
Gentiles.
wants, because if
Right.
a B'nai Noach wants to do a mitzvah, he's going to get the same opposition. But guess what? From everybody,
I guess it's
from
just
the
human
Jews
nature.
and from the
I think-
from the non-Jews.
I think you raise a really good point. I think what's really going on here is people divide the world into us and me and people who are different. So you see, like the Gentiles don't like, some of them don't like the Jews because the Jews are a people set apart. They are different, and yet within the B'nai Noach itself, there's branches of the B'nai Noach that are set apart and different. And we don't like people who are different. Is that it?
That's I think that is the natural psychological genetic memory,
Yes.
this is my tribe, that's your tribe type of deal and mindset. And I think that's got a physical, psychological boundary set from time. But if we go beyond time and we go beyond that, I'm seeing where it's looking like, to me, like it's the mitzvah itself. It
Because
is the
do
mitzvah.
that they don't.
They don't want you
I
doing
don't-
the mitzvah. I guarantee you, the church don't want me doing the mitzvah, and the Jew doesn't want me to do a mitzvah.
There are many denominations who are against acts, even though there are some that are for acts, as far as that goes.
Yeah,
The early church was divided amongst those who said, "Oh, we still need." The early church, of course, were Jews in the first century, right?
hmm
And that they were divided amongst those sects that felt they should still follow Judaic law, regard to kashrut and so forth, and those who did not, right? And that didn't they have a tension there? I think Paul was addressing that to some extent.
Oh yeah, there was a lot of tension between Paul and James, and
Right, right.
who was Paul was trying to lead them away from the Jewish mitzvahs and separate these people out, and James was being much more Jewish and much more connected with the mitzvah. So and when we start looking at this problem, what I see is the mitzvah right in the middle of it. Who's doing what Hashem said? Who's doing the Torah? And we're going to dislike anyone that's doing the Torah if it's not whoever's doing the Torah, or whoever's not doing it.
I think getting back to the broader picture of why there's anti-Semitism, I think there's anti-Semitism for multiple reasons. I don't think there's one reason. Some of it has to do with ignorance. A lot of people who don't know that much about the Jews, and they have some false impressions about the Jews, and sometimes when they learn those aren't true, they relax their hatred.
They can, yeah.
They can.
It's with like the what is that? The Elders of Zion.
Oh yeah, the Protocols of the Elders of Zion.
Yeah, So and
you think that's true, right?
Yeah. See, I can walk into a lot of circles, and I can hear these conversations where if I was had payas and a kippah on, I wouldn't be able to do that. But and so I can still hear people talk about these concepts as if they were true.
The Jews have too much power.
It's misinformation. Or
it is misinformation. They have all the money. They got all they control all these things, and it's too bad it was the Gentiles that wouldn't let the Jews own land or do any work, so where all they can do is become bankers and accountants. And then we complain about them being bankers and accountants.
Europe, but yeah, there's a great line. You've heard this line before. There can be no peace without justice, right? I think we need to add a line to that. There can be no justice without knowledge. Because if you have false knowledge, and you're going to act on that false knowledge, and you're going to make wrong decisions. Because you don't know, you have to really strive for what is real and what is true.
I wonder if it's the nature of people, if it's their nature, to believe a lie over the truth. Yeah, I have to wonder at this point.
At least not to examine it. It's like, and that's the problem with like some of the anti-Semitism on campus. Like when they're demonstrating against Gaza, they're holding up signs that say "From the river to the sea." They asked some of those people. Someone interviewed them. Which river and which sea? They didn't know, and they didn't bother to ask either. You see, it's like they're just doing that, copying what other people are doing without using their God-given brains to investigate and research that.
Well, I think it's an idea of being honest. I mean, how honest am I going to be with myself? Because that's what I had to do. I had to be really honest.
Well, that's right.
I had to become honest and find out what is going on here and what's happening, and what am I going to do, and how am I going to react to this? How am I going to respond? Because I got to be honest. And, it's one of the things that I told my wife. I said, we're going too far. We either got to, go all the way or quit this altogether because we're going too far.
Your wife is
and
with
we
you on all
made the
this journey,
commitment.
right?
Yeah, as far as staying in the church or studying Torah. So, we made the commitment to go on and to pursue this and to see where it's gone. But, we've ran across many Christians that would say, well, if I'm wrong, I'm just going to go to hell then. Well, you know what? Guess what? There's no hell. So what are you talking about? You even got that wrong. So you're not even going to go there. But, we can.
It's a really sad situation that there's a lot of things about Christianity I admire. There's a lot of wisdom in the New Testament. It's unfortunate that they had this line that there is no one can go to the Father except through the Son. It's funny how they interpret that literally, but not other verses. Like, oh, it's okay. The verse about it is easier for a wise man to go through the eye of a needle than get to heaven. They don't take that literally, do they? Yeah. But too many of them take literally that. And what people take literally is interesting too, including Jews. It's like what verses they decide they're going to take literally versus the ones they're going to relax a little bit. I think that's human nature too. If there's Christians listen to this by this point, if they're still here, if they're still with us at this point,
they are going to be shocked that we're talking like this, because in their mind and in their heart, they love Israel and they love the Jewish people.
Well, a
For
lot
the
of
most
them
part.
do. Especially,
And they want, and a lot, and it's probably more than I'm gonna give credit for, but they probably they really do, and those are going to be shocked. But to me, making someone change in order to fit your perspectives is not loving him, but there is Christians that's going to say, Jews are saved because of the covenant. We've got to have Jesus because this is what we got to have, because we don't have that. And goes back to the basis that I was talking about, is that they don't see themselves within the Torah. They don't have an identity within the Torah because the church never taught them that. The church taught them that God only started loving the Gentile when Jesus came.
Because they were grafted onto the tree. Is that the right verse in the New Testament? It's like the Gentiles are grafted onto the tree of the Jew at that point. Do you know what I'm talking about? Did I say that right?
Yeah. Where they come together, they're grafted together. That's I don't know how much the church believes in that. Now, those that are following the lost tribes and that they use that to attach themselves, and this is one of the problems I've been thinking about here lately, and that is this idea that all these problems, and I'm just going to say that's probably anti-Semitism as well, that's coming in here, is because the whole Gentile world is trying to figure out how to connect to Hashem, okay? And so they know because they're thinking that it's the Jewish people is a chosen people. They're connected with Hashem. They have that. So they exile the Jewish people, throw them out of their land, develop a church to where they can come up with their replacement theology, and that's not connecting them to Hashem. And so now we're seeing this arising coming up about, we love the Torah and we love the Jewish people, and we're so connected and drawn to this. We must be the lost tribes. So now guess what? We are Israel again. So instead of the replacement theology being Israel, they're Israel through these lost tribes.
They've kind of rediscovered the Old Testament, right? In a way, they went from replacement theory, and we're not talking about all the more liberal Christian, but we're not talking about all Christian denominations. Like the more liberal ones, they don't believe any of that. But it seems like the fundamentalist Christians have rediscovered the Old Testament almost in a way that's made them reconnect with the Jewish people, but that's like my wife's friend, who's a dear friend of mine, and I've maintained a friendship with her, and she's a wonderful person, and I think she's great. I wish more people would be like her. I wish more Jews would be like her, because she's such a decent, ethical person.
Yeah. But the moral of the story is that we're just trying to connect with Hashem. And trying to figure out how to do it. And instead of finding ourselves within the Torah and finding ourselves as this, this, what is it, Nelva Ger, finding this ger, this stranger that has joined himself to the Jewish people, and thus joining themselves to Hashem, to his covenant, to the Messiah, to just as this person, this Ger Toshav, would have done if he was living in the land. Mm-hmm. He would have been there, and so it's this connection that they're looking for, and it's this, and they're trying to make their system fit this when there's already a system in place. They don't understand the Torah. They don't understand their place within the Torah, and they don't accept their place
I
in the
think
Torah.
that's true for some people, but there's plenty of Christians who are very happy with their religion, and they I don't want to stereotype.
No, of course they're happy with it.
I mean, they're happy and they have no problem with us, and they're just like, they just love their religion, and they're not, they're not perturbed by our existence. Some of them are. Some of certainly not. They have a love. In some ways, they have a love-hate relationship. What worries me about the fundamentalist Christians is I feel like they're our friends, and that's great. They could always turn. It's
Well,
like
I guarantee you, you talk to one long enough, he's gonna try to convince you about Jesus, and
they
that's
will
the
try.
problem.
They will try to convert you, but
Yeah.
then the saving grace, if you will, is that they said, "Oh well, we're still commanded to love you." I'm like, oh, thank God.
Well, commanded to love you. Yeah. We're gonna.
It
We're
depends
gonna.
on the law.
Islam is a different. Now, Islam has a bunch of different problems with the Jews. And a lot of it has to do with how the Jews are portrayed in the Quran. Again, there's a lot of. Have you ever read the Quran? I haven't read the whole thing, but there's a lot of stuff about the Israelites in the Quran, which surprised me when I first read it. They have a love-hate relationship with they call the Jews and the Christians the people of the book.
Oh yeah.
But and I think a lot of anti-Semitism from the Arab world comes from Islam. It's not just a struggle over land. It's really not. It's like, it really has to do with, I think it's religious to a large degree, more than they're willing to admit.
Well, this kind of all kind of boils down into when, I was, looking at the Torah in perspectives of archetypes. Okay, you've got Esav and Ishmael and Yaakov, and so you've got these archetypal figures of these peoples, and so really, when we look at that, we've got these brothers that are grappling over their place,
Right.
and so we see this internal struggle through the three major religions of the world, encompassing billions of people, and they're all trying to struggle for their position, and and the ones that are having more of a struggle with it are the ones that don't accept Jacob and the place that he has achieved through his relationship with Hashem. I don't think that should lessen Esav or Ishmael if we just accept.
Absolutely, the New Testament. See, that's why I don't think there's nearly as much anti-Semitism among like the Hindus, because they don't have competing. They're not competing against us. You know what I mean? It's like they have their own system, a lot of which I admire. They're not. That's why you're not going to see a lot of Indians who have anti-Semitism, because we're not in their scriptures. You see, we're in the New Testament and we're in the Quran, but we're not in the Bhagavad Gita. And so I think that's part of the problem. That, like you said, they're competing views of like who's right.
Yeah, because they're all based upon this Abrahamic origin.
Right. Abraham's got different branches, like you said, and which one's right? Whereas, like in Hinduism, they don't have that issue at all. They're like, "Oh,
Right.
welcome everybody.
So-
We don't care."
So, in other words, this is touching on the root of the problem, in my opinion. The problem is from those more closely affiliated with Judaism than other religions.
Yes,
that are not
exactly.
Judaism,
You
but
think
are
that-
closely
you think
affiliated.
that they were, yes, you think that they were closely, they would get along better, but not necessarily, because you
so
have
what-
you have competition amongst family.
So, what is the common ground? If a person comes, before we talk about what religion they are, and perhaps like a commentator might call this a Judeo-Christian value, but in other words, you're not focusing on any specific religion. You're saying that I want the ethics and morals of God to run my life, and and of course through the Hebrew Bible, the Tanakh, or that corresponds mostly to the Old Testament.
Right.
We have something that everyone values. The Quran talks about respect towards the Jews Torah. So the starting point is the idea that the creator of the world, who is the same one that Jews recognize and everyone accepts, that spoke to Moses, gave his word on Sinai. So that God has certain baseline ethics and morals that everyone has to cater to before we talk about the other minutiae of religions and how they veer off from this. But
That's what Hillel said.
in one of my essays, I found a common theme in Tanakh, in the Hebrew Scripture. That over 20 times it mentions the concept of mishpat u'tzedakah, that God wants the world, people, He values when people value mishpat u'tzedakah, which is justice, and tzedakah is either righteousness or charity, depending on the context. So I want to read actually 3 verses on this concept of mishpat u'tzedakah. So first of all, we just recently had that Torah portion in the synagogue. So God was talking about speaking to Abraham before the destruction of the city of Sodom and Gomorrah. So God said, this is in Genesis chapter 18, verse 17, 18 and 19. And the Lord said, "Shall I conceal from Abraham what I am doing? And Abraham will become a great and powerful nation, and all the nations of the world will be blessed in him." So from a Jewish perspective, right, the 5 books of Moses, we're talking about the revelation at Sinai. You understand? But so continuing in verse 19, "For I have known him because he commands his sons and his household after him, that they should keep the way of the Lord, to perform tzedakah mishpat, righteousness and justice, in order that the Lord bring upon Abraham that which he spoke concerning him." And then it says about King David, "And David reigned over all Israel, and David administered justice and charity for all his people, mishpat tzedakah." And then it says in Isaiah, so that was from Samuel, 2 Samuel, chapter 8, about King David. And then in Isaiah chapter 1, I believe it's verse 27. Yeah. "Tzion b'mishpat tipada v'shaveh b'tzedakah," and Zion shall be redeemed through justice, and her penitent through righteousness.
That theme keeps coming up, doesn't
it? It's over 20 times in Tanakh.
Yeah.
The same phrase, tzedakah mishpat, or mishpat tzedakah. And so this is the theme of Tanakh. One of the main themes of Tanakh is not just that God is real, of course, but we see that so many varying stories, but throughout the Tanakh, this is a common theme of mishpat tzedakah, justice and righteousness. So, in other words, the ethics and morals of the Torah, but as applied, as taught, because Abraham will teach the future generations, and then the whole world will be blessed through them. So, if everybody is willing to take upon at least the basic rudimentary morals and ethics that transcend all religions, and they're common to every Western religion, right? Once
And
you start going into details, then only then you could have an argument. But this is, again, we're talking about the Hebrew, the Bible, the Tanakh, from Moses to Malachi was a span of 1,000 years, and it's a common theme, mishpat tzedakah. So we just have to go down and remember what it says in Deuteronomy chapter 4, that the Torah, when you fulfill the Torah, then you're getting the chachmasachem u'binaschem leinei ha'amim. So knowledge and understanding for the nations. So knowledge and understanding from the nations comes from
Yes.
fulfilling the Torah. But what is the basic of the Torah? Not the part of the Torah that you're going to start a fight. Who's the bigger heretic between us? But
Right.
the part of the Torah that everybody agrees that the Torah itself repeats over 20 times throughout Tanakh, Mishpat Tzedakah.
And I think that the Jews are, when we adhere to those righteousness, we do better. When we have the most trouble when we don't apply it to ourselves. I keep thinking about like the Romans invaded Judea in 63 BC. How they would have come in anyhow? But you know how they came in? Because there were two kings who were like, or there were two groups that were asking Pompey the general to take their side. Do you see when that's the Roman? In other words, they asked the Romans to intervene in a Jewish civil war, and so when we abandon our own, what's the word again?
Mishpat Tzedakah?
When we abandon that, we invite anti-Semitism. How about that as a possibility?
In other words, when we abandon the universal concepts in Tanakh,
when we abandon those,
in other words,
yeah.
No, well, I mean, it
I'm
says
not justifying the anti-Semites doing that. Don't get me wrong.
Exactly.
I'm not saying that it's our fault. I'm saying that if we could learn to stop doing this and start being more righteous ourselves and actually take on the role that Hashem wants us to do, then maybe that would help ameliorate some of this.
Yeah, I mean, if you're having a religious class, and the religious class is reviewing a particular text, and that text, is a comparison between Jewish philosophy and a different philosophy, so then you're going to eventually have to evaluate what we believe to be God's word, this is clear heresy to this concept, and what isn't. But when you're talking about making a massive movement to counter a massive movement for evil, then you have to take a step back and look at the baseline concepts of Tanakh, the baseline value that God was trying to communicate over the course of 1,000 years of Tanakh. And that, again, in my opinion, is Mishpat Tzedakah. And I have an essay on my blog that's rabbifriedlander.wordpress.com. So you could look it up. The Mishpat Tzedakah is over 20 times mentioned in Tanakh.
I didn't know that. No, I do like the. Where's the verse where it says? Is that in Deuteronomy? It says, "Justice, justice, justice, thou shalt pursue." That's one of my favorite lines.
It's beautiful.
That's my favorite line. One of my favorite lines in the whole Torah.
Yeah, and Deuteronomy is filled with wonderful things. So I think that's the idea, is that, yes, when we're talking about minutia, of course, any faith is going to say, we're right and you're wrong. But when you're talking about breaking down people who have given themselves over to hate for something as simple as they haven't done their research, they haven't thought it through, they haven't thought about what's the objective ideal of morals and ethics that God would want of me.
And people kill over the minutia. Like, look at what Russell's saying. You can see the animosity there because this group, he's keeping kosher and they're not.
Right, because you're talking about the details.
You see how you're
not talking about the big picture.
People will kill over minutia.
Right, but when you take a step back...
Not you, but,
Right, understood. So this, in the concept of fighting anti-Semitism, this is my supposition, I suggest that looking at baseline Torah ethics that God taught over the span of many prophets, such as Mishpat or Tzedakah and righteousness, and then it becomes more clear. Yeah, this is a concept where we don't have to insult somebody for believing in that prophet or that prophet that we reject. There's no conflict, and the conflict is only among those nations, as Jason pointed out, that we are in a competition over. So therefore, taking this step back and going to the baseline concepts such as Mishpat Tzedakah, as again in America, a secular commentator might call this a Judeo-Christian value. But Judeo-Christian value means something Jews and Gentiles both agree with, right? And Jews and Gentiles can only agree on something, for example, in Tanakh, maybe not something from New Testament, maybe not something from Talmud. But if it's in Tanakh, hopefully we could agree with it. And a common theme in Tanakh here, we've pinpointed the idea that Mishpat Tzedakah, charity and righteousness. Okay. Yes. Any comments?
No, I think from our perspective, you're talking about a this theme. Is that another theme that I seem to see is that how Hashem is obviously interested in the nations knowing about his existence and knowing that existence through the Jewish people. That and we can see that, when we read the Psalms or we read through those things, that the nations will know that I am God. So there seems to be an interest throughout this theme of God wanting the nations to know that, and he set up a particular people and gave them a Torah in order for that knowledge to be known of this righteousness and justice and how things are supposed to be.
And there's another verse. It's also outstanding because it speaks as to a summation of God's philosophy, literally speaking. It's in Micah chapter 6 verse 8. I'll say it in the original prophecy in Hebrew and then I'll translate. Higid lecha adam ma tovu ma Hashem doresh mimacha ki im asos mishpat v'avas chesed v'atznei lechas im elokecha. He has told you, O man, what is good and what the Lord demands of you, but to do justice and to love loving kindness and to walk discreetly with your God. So the prophet himself says this is all God is really asking of you. Right,
and all the Tanakh is a way to make it is a way to make sure that happens. It's like some of the minutia is in support of that larger goal.
Right now, when you go into minutia,
that's how
for example,
I see it. Now that's just my version of seeing it. That
when everybody at work they go to work, they work for a common goal, right? But when they go home, everybody's has to pay their bills and utilities. If they don't pay their heating bill, whether it's electricity or gas in the winter, so they could have severe danger to their whole family, right? Absolutely. So their heating bill is extremely important in their house. It's not important in my house as much. I hope they don't freeze, but I don't want to know when their bill is due. I want to concentrate on when my bill is due. So when we're talking about the minutiae of my religion, it's very important to me. When we talk about the minutiae of someone else's religion, I really don't want too many details making me confused, unless I make a study of it at some later date. But when you're talking about what we do at the workplace, we have to go to common themes such as Mishpat. So this is a beautiful concept.
I think that's right. I mean, I think if we can focus on that.
Yeah, so I guess that's a good place for us to pause the conversation, I guess. Unless there's any last comments.
I'm going to go pay my bill. Thanks for reminding me.
Yeah.
Yeah, just don't tell me when it's due. I hope you don't freeze up.
Yeah. I can't believe you're not interested. I can't believe you're not interested in my electric bill, Rabbi.